Seriously, there's no fruit flavored fish sticks.
You ready to dive into this thing?
Let's do it. I'm nicely warmed up, I suppose.
We posted on Facebook asking people if they had any suggestions for conversations between Chris and I while we were sitting around, hanging out, doing businessy things in a cabin away from home for the week. And John O'Neill had the idea of suggested that we talk about what it takes to be a master of your craft and how long that took and the 10,000 hours. I'm going to pull up his comment right now so I can say the question specifically. So John asked, maybe drill down on what it takes to be a master at a craft. What were the first 10,000 hours like compared to all of the hours since? Does mastering one craft make it easier to master others? Is there some sort of common blueprint that others can follow? I think these are all really cool questions. Chris and I talk about them quite often because there's a lot to be said here. I think where to start is like how Chris and I got to where we are, which is very, very similarly. Just as a kid, we just did the thing. Chris can tell us a little bit about what you were like as a kid in school and when you started scribbling on all the things.
I did, I started drawing young, but I always drew cars. So that was natural for me to always want to draw cars. I drew other stuff and whatever, but, so my practice, although I didn't look at it at the time this way, my practice started really, really young anyways. And it was something I did frequently enough as a hobby, although I didn't overly take it serious, and that's part of what kept it fun anyways. But just like riding a bike or skateboarding is something you start to do young, and as long as you're doing it all the time and learning, you're always improving, or at least the background motor skills are always there. So yeah, an early start really, really helps, even if you put it off for a while, as I did. But that doesn't mean I wasn't making mistakes then, and I don't make mistakes now. But early exposure really, really helped.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of brings up a good point that you just fundamentally you were interested in drawing cars. It wasn't something that just popped up some later point of your life. You were just drawn to cars.
100%.
From moment one.
Always really liked cars. I would say I started liking trains first, but they had way more wheels and moving parts. They were just more complex.
Hard to buy and drive on your own as well.
Yeah, it was just, at the time that I was interested in trains when I was like 5, I liked steam engines, and I didn't realize because I was young and I didn't know any better, the steam engines has already been phased out by that point.
Yeah.
It was really riding the rails, as it were.
Yeah.
So, so as much as they are cool artfully, I didn't even know when I started liking cars, honestly, but that was the first and only thing that I ever really enjoyed drawing. Drew other stuff, but something that you already enjoy, translating it into something else you enjoy is pretty seamless, I think.
Yeah. There's always, of course, there's the saying that, get a job doing what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of truth to that. There's definitely days we're still working.
Yeah, there's some truth to it. When you think about a job that is a creative industry or as a craftsman, the work that you're doing when you're actually doing the work oftentimes doesn't feel as worky. But then there's the other 90% of running a business that all the creative side doesn't prepare you for and is necessary in order to successfully do stuff. And that, I wouldn't want to say that it saps some of the fun. It's not as fun as the part where you're actually sitting down doing something creative.
Yeah.
But, so, yeah, there's truth and untruth to that.
Yeah.
Creative jobs are a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Yeah.
When you're beginning to do it.
When you're self-employed, that means it also comes with all the other things.
Yeah, that's true.
For sure. Well, I've kind of, same thing, from an early age. I mean, there's literally cars drawn in my baby book.
Wow.
I didn't have much choice but to be into cars. My dad named my sister Holly after the carburetor. So I was just going to be into cars. I didn't have much choice at that point. But the mechanical side, like anybody can be into cars, but me ended up being mechanical as I am and doing the design work and stuff. I was designing bicycles at like 12 years old. I've got drawings stuffed around somewhere of a frame that I designed, even the profile of the tubing. I had it all drawn out. my first motorcycle I bought in a bucket. Like the transmission was blown apart, gears weren't even on shafts. It was literally just loose, everything, every single part, and I had to buy a manual and figure out how to put it all together. And it was, my dad was very mechanically skilled, so he gave me the basics and then said, go for it and have fun. And this was at maybe 15, 14 years old or something like that. So it was always the same thing. Working on the bicycles that I was, all my friends always asked me to do all the things. I was just fundamentally going to work on cars in some form or fashion for the rest of my life. And then one of the things you and I talk about quite often that I think is what it's easy to just slough off because we feel like we've worked our asses off to get to where we are. And John brought up the 10,000 hours from, Malcolm Gladwell popularized that, but I think he's missing a big part of that is the type of work we do is very different. You and I both on this during this week we're both drawing, working on things that require an incredible level of spatial relationship understanding, seeing a two-dimensional view and being able to create three-dimensional information out of it.
Very true.
Where you've talked about needing a particular view of a vehicle. Nobody has any reference photos, so as long as you look at a couple basic reference photos, you can make up the information necessary
I'll figure it out.
to draw the view that's needed by your client or whatever the situation, or the layout, the composition of the artwork or whatever needs a different view. Somebody didn't take some weird, super high on a ladder, 3/4 view from some odd corner.
Not usually.
Yeah, so the 10,000 hours is great for practice, but fundamentally, your brain was pre-wired to be able to create the information.
Maybe, or at the very least, I focused on that as something to try to help my mind grow with consistently throughout everything. So I probably wasn't as aware of it then in the early days as I would be now, but I must have been honing that the entire time and just not knowing it.
Yeah.
Because it would be a harder thing to, I think, learn later to do. And I think the idea of 10,000 hours kind of works for works for a lot of things, but it makes me think of stuff that you could do with that's a little bit more memory-based, something that you do repetitively a lot and repeating results. That is a matter of time in some ways. You can memorize the answers and the process to do something and to do it really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, I think that argument can be made about drawing. It's not likely you're going to get worse after 10,000 hours, but drawing, recreating a photograph, I think is a matter of practice anyways, in a fundamental sense, versus needing to recreate everything from scratch based on the loose figures that you're given. I feel like that could be learned, maybe, but it's a different thing. It's not something you're going to memorize the process how to do. There's some fundamentals in there, but filling in the gaps, I think, takes real problem solving.
Like creating your own lighting source.
Exactly. Or just having a good fundamental basis of perspective. Pretty much everything works in a system of perspective, and then eventually everything really works in this basic system of lighting. And I think of it in really simplified terms, but when I'm trying to explain it to somebody, it seems like something that's being said for the first time.
Yeah.
Because we're used to looking at something, and like a photo, for example, and breaking down how we're going to make that photo in our own way. And that translation is what somebody's art is. Versus, how would I do this if I needed to take this car and rotate it a little bit or flip it on its head a little bit? Because in my mind, I'm thinking enough steps ahead to go, okay, this person wants to show, let's say, stripes, the hood, and this paint job, and these wheels. In my mind, trying to simplify everything. I'm always trying to simplify and come up with the most straightforward answer that's still going to make a ton of work for me to do. But how can I get one view to do as many of these things as possible? So I don't have to draw 10 views for somebody for them to see all the ideas that we're talking about. Because I could do it, but it just doesn't seem like a good use of time.
Yeah.
And then again, just scraping the internet to find somebody walked around a Camaro and took every single picture. I don't really want to waste the time to do it. Instead, let's just draw a single angle that incorporates 75% at least of everything, and then we can get a supplemental view that does everything. So instead of relying on trying to find that one right image, which every now and then one just pops up and you're like, oh yeah, save myself some time here guessing. But yeah, I don't. It does seem like certain fundamentals people aren't predisposed to them in the way that I think that they are, because it seems like a normal motor skill to me to be like, oh yeah, well, all you got to do is lay out the box, flip it the direction you want, put in the ellipses the direction that goes, and then start building the car off of that. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
I've done it a million times, and that's the part where I go, well, 10,000 hours sort of makes sense, because I've done it enough times to be able to do it, in a mathematical way. So that's teachable, but making up all the information where there's gaps is what's important.
Yeah.
Looking at reference images that are all the wrong angles, have all the wrong information, but going, I can just barely see this piece, and I know what it does here. Because of the way the light looks on this line, I know that it's a reverse curve from the other side. So just place it there and color it that way when the time comes. And that sounds really, really abstract to say it out loud in that way, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But trying to explain to somebody to do that, like if I was going to be a teacher and go, this is how we're going to learn to do it, that'd be a really hard fundamental to break down.
Yeah. Well, I think it'd probably be a whole lot similar to people will commonly send me photos of their steering that they're trying to figure out and get rid of their bump steer, and
Yeah.
they've moved something out of the way, and I immediately see, oh man, you just messed up your Ackerman. And they go, well, how does that work? And then I, give them some information about Ackerman, and then all of a sudden they're confused, and so they'll make a suggestion. So in the way you're talking about, one small change in three-dimensional views changes all three dimensions.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so if somebody goes, well, this will get rid of my Ackerman problem. Well, yeah, but now you just created a bump steer problem in this sense, or you just lengthened your tie rod, and there's so many oddball things that are associated with that. I can glance at it because I've learned those, and I don't know that I'd say 10,000 hours, but because I can process spatial relationships in that way that you're talking about, I can glance at it and go, oh man, yeah, you've just backed yourself into a corner. There's no way to fix that efficiently.
Part of what you're describing, though, is experience for what you've done.
Of course, but not everybody's going to be able to process that.
That's true.
The spatial relationships thing is critical, and of course I've learned that by this way. So you can learn by screwing up, but what if the next vehicle comes along and the steering's way high? What if the steering system is pushed back really far because it's an oddball vehicle? I mean, there's a lot of cars that nobody talks about that stuff.
Yeah.
What if the inner tie rods are pushed back, or what if they're pushed forward in relation to the suspension? That all affects Ackerman. And so you've got it figured out on an S10. You can glance and you realize that this happened on an S10, and then you get some F truck that's got a really weird steering piece, or an I-beam truck or whatever.
Yeah.
Can you process that? You learned this, but does it cross over to that?
Yeah, I think that gets into learning the fundamentals before you try to take on such a big project, because that's a good example of being able to memorize the answer or the solution to this particular problem. But that's one solution for this one problem. That doesn't necessarily translate into everything. And artwork is a lot like that. The fundamentals can be broken down. If you're good at the fundamentals, it works with everything.
Yeah.
But if you're learning, each piece is, of course, helping you learn to do the next thing. But each piece is going to have its own problems that you need to solve. And you need to come at them with a fresh perspective, so you're not taking old solutions and bring them along. And you're building experience off of everything. But to your point, the solution of learning one isn't going to teach you how to do all of them.
Yeah. I think it'd be as similar to, you could be terrible at math and not even understand that 2 + 2 = 4, but still memorize the times table.
For sure.
You could still memorize answers. I think most of us just memorize answers anyways.
Generally anyways.
Yeah, like it's a very, very low percentage of people who are truly good at math. Like, true math people who chase that. That's an incredibly low number of people, because it's a very specific type of thing. Can you learn it? Sure, you can memorize a lot of stuff, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be Stephen Hawking's the fifth dimension or whatever, quantum mechanics or physics or all the different dimensions that are happening. That doesn't mean we can even possibly hope to process that.
Right. Problem solving and memorizing have some overlap, but they're not the same.
Yes. Yeah. I agreed. And I think that's, getting back to John saying, is there some sort of common blueprint that others can follow? I think you kind of fundamentally have to, your brain has to be predisposed to be able to do that. If you don't have a predisposition towards doing something, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
You can put in your 10,000 hours and memorize a thing.
And you can ultimately end up at it, but your 10,000 hours might be much harder earned than somebody else's.
Yeah.
And if it's still not something that's a natural skill of yours, there might be a threshold that's lower than where you want to be, that everybody's not cut out to do every single job. Just because you're passionate about the idea of doing something doesn't overly qualify you to do it. And the best thing you could be is just honest with yourself about what your own progress is in your journey. Like, is this something I can do sustainably? Am I good enough at this to do this all the time? Will it not drive me crazy to do this all the time? And is this worth enough to do at the speed and pace and quality that I do to make it work like as a full-time thing? That's what's tricky about turning pretty much everybody that we know in this industry started out as a hobbyist to some level, and it grew into their business. So I'm sure everybody has their own story and version of how that transition happened. But because we all more or less started out in the industry as a hobby anyways, that makes our transition, I think, a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Because our background and our passion is already there, already aware that the hardships will come. There's like this really abrupt point of learning it for it to become a business that's a little bit uncomfortable because that's not creative and that's not fun.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you see plenty of people come and go through the industry at the same time, people who couldn't successfully turn the hobby in for any number of reasons. We all deal with stress a lot differently.
Yeah.
And that's a huge factor because there's nothing unstressful about running your own business.
No.
But everybody's threshold for that and their comfort level with that. Most people in the industry can talk about what it's like to not get paid on time or get paid what your time's worth, and that inconsistency is enough to keep plenty of people from doing it full time or not for doing it full time long, because most people need to feel like they're making a living consistently.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest. Anytime people ask me, advice to get into business, they go, well, what if I just can't make enough money consistently? Yep.
Yeah, right? Yeah, you might want to just plan on that.
Yeah, pretty much, even though, I've been doing this for over 2 decades now. Yeah, I've got this nice little lull of the last 2 years where stuff happened and just struggling from day to day to make sure that my bills are paid. It's nice that things are established, so I know that tomorrow money is absolutely there, but it's not the way that you would expect 20 years in business to be flowing in. They happen. It's just the reality of it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of variables that land at that. There's times that are exceptionally good, and there's times that are exceptionally low, and same with doing artwork. I don't really know when one's going to be good, one month is going to be better than another, or a really low month. But I've been in the industry long enough to know that doesn't, me having a slow week or not a great month isn't a reflection on who I am as a person, so I don't take it personally anymore and let that stress me out. But thankfully there's so much variation in the stuff that I do that I can make up my own slack in a bunch of different ways. It just means I have to work more at other times on things that are alternative to what I do. So that's definitely one of the bigger benefits, is knowing that all of your income is basically within your control if you are accountable for all the time that you spend working. If you have a family or an actual job or a side job or something, then your time is divided and it's much harder to keep track of all the time that you need to make the income that you need. But because my priorities are very simplified, because I have a simple existence, it's very easy for me to make sure that I'm making at least what I need to, just because my work is really diversified compared to other people that have the same job as I do.
Yeah, and I think all of that kind of, going back around to the whole point of different people can handle different types of things in that sense. We've talked about the fact on a number of occasions that there's no way you and I could do production work.
No.
We're just not made for it.
No, and I did it or tried rather, for the early part of my career, yes.
Yeah, but it's maddening.
Yes.
The idea, there's shops, I watch shops that are just out there killing it because they can do production work.
Absolutely.
It drives me nuts. So it's just simply circling back around to, is there, as John's question is there a blueprint that that others can follow? I mean, not in that sense. Only if you understand what your brain is. I can tell you for sure, you and I cannot do production work. Is that what you can do? Is that not? You got to be really honest with you in order to use whatever that blueprint is.
Yeah. And the answer to the blueprint question isn't nobody should do production work. It's there's people that are cut out for that.
Oh yeah.
And the best thing you can do is find who you are in your own process of learning to be you, to figure out what your strengths are and how to apply them to the thing that you're trying to do. Because there are great jobs in the production world. It's just different personalities allow the space to do those things or be against it. I can't work with that type of structure. I don't really like someone telling me what to do all the time, especially in a creative industry. So that comes with its own caveats and its own negative stuff, but I can't do my best creative work in those types of environments.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I experienced in it and I had a good background in working in the body shop, and I enjoyed that as my past life, and I could take all those lessons moving forward going, I never want to do most of these things ever again.
Yeah.
Because I actually tried really hard to fit the mold, and I didn't realize it because I was young that my brain was fighting me the entire time for almost 10 years.
Wow.
And it was really easy to just let go and be like, wow, I wasn't cut out for that, because somehow me hanging out drawing at a desk in my kitchen earns me a better living, and my brain is just, I feel like I've got a better head on my shoulders. Life makes more sense when I do things my own way, which sounds really, really conceited, but I'm in charge of my own life, so I'm the one that has to figure out how to make everything work. If there was a part of me that felt like I need to get a real job and I'm going to go out there and do the thing, I would, but that's not who I am.
Yeah.
I would rather spend more time doing what I already know how to do and enjoy, with more hours to make up for a month that I need a little bit more or whatever, than to even consider getting a job somewhere in an industry where I know exactly how to do the job. I'm professionally trained. But that's always in the back of my mind of, I never want to do that again. Mm-hmm. So all I got to do is keep pushing forward with where I'm at.
Yeah.
Not for fear of going back, that's just not who I am. I can't do it.
Yeah, same. So in that same, in exactly that, digressing back to the original thing is the blueprint. You have your own blueprints.
Yeah, it's different for everybody.
Yeah, you've got to find your own thing. Like I said, there's a piece of me that's a little envious of these guys that can just crank it out and make money, but I'm not here to just make money.
Yeah.
I have to do the creative things that make my brain happy.
Yeah.
I've reconciled myself to never being rich, because being the eccentric artist rarely comes with a paycheck. Not until I die, anyways.
Sure, of course.
Then I'm going to be praised for for being an eccentric artist, doing the things that I do. But, cycling back around to what different people are skilled at, there's a term called multi-potentialite, where people are they have the potential to do multiple things. I'm really good at a lot of different things. But we've also talked about the fact that my brain does not process chaos or abstract things. If you were to, the Rain Man is that idiot savant syndrome thing, where you drop a bunch of cards on the ground and he's got them all counted within seconds. If you were to take a Scrabble bucket and dump a bunch of words on the ground, I'd look at that pile of letters that could be any word you can imagine, and my brain's like, I see if, I see the, cat. Yeah, if I really look hard, I might find like love or hate. But my brain does not look at that mess of stuff on the ground and put any sort of mess together. So because of that, I'm not inventing anything. And so what my brain has done over the 10,000 years, or 10,000 hours, if we're going to use that as an example of what's happened, is over those 10,000 hours, my brain has gone, well, our crutch is not being able to process abstract or chaos or whatever the mess might be. So my brain's had to figure out remembering all of these wild mechanical devices or whatever the things are. So when somebody comes to me and goes, hey, the Tundra is a good example of that. How do we fit steering underneath this thing after I built the chassis? I came up with that wild system because I had to. I'd seen something kind of like that done in the past, and I was able to put all the pieces together and make it happen. I'm really, really skilled at being able to put it all together and make it happen, but to think that I came up with that on my own out of the blue some abstract thing. Hell no. My subconscious held on to that information, learned how to do that over 10,000 hours, and has never forgot it, because that's the only way I can continue to be successful in doing the designing and the suspension stuff that I do and coming up with a problem solver. Because that's my position, right? Is figuring out how to make things happen. The Volvo is a good example of that, doing something that nobody else has done. And then my subconscious is hanging on to all this crazy shit for me and feeding it up when I need it. I can't process chaos. So to think that I was going to chase a career doing abstract art, or I've got to be, an idea generator, where you're just sitting in a think tank coming up with wild ideas. I'm not that guy. I can't. I'll never be that guy.
That's okay.
Because I'm not an abstract thought guy. And I'm not upset about it. I've completely accepted that. But it's not me. And there's no amount of that. And I think on that same token, we could use that guy that can do the math problems in his brain faster than somebody with a calculator can. His brain is pre-wired to do that. They put him on a brain scanner thing, and they asked him to process that, and they found out that it's using a completely different part of his brain that's enormous. I believe it was the speech center to process this. How can any of us hope to practice 10,000 hours or 100,000 hours and be what this guy is?
Yeah.
His brain is wired differently. You can't compare yourself to that. People that are at the top of their game are usually there because they're predisposed to be there.
That makes sense.
They just happen to spend their life cultivating it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot more reality to 10,000 hours in favor of what you've been experiencing and the memorization and the experiences that you're taking with you. If you're a natural-born problem solver, then those things can work hand in hand, and that's probably true more often than somebody who's just generally gifted off the street, however that works. But some people just are naturally better at some things than others, for sure. And I think the roadmap thing is a little bit tricky because everybody's so different and everybody's journey is so different. And even for me, I would say most people went to school for what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the traditional roadmap.
Yeah.
But very few people that I've met or talked to do what I do. They end up working for a company or in-house somewhere, which seems good, but I think most people would rather be freelance. There's a lot more risk in what I do. There's like a more guaranteed route to success in a way if you go to school. There's some pre-planned route there, but you don't know what the end result's going to be. I also didn't know what the end result was going to be, but I also know that I don't like going to school.
Yeah.
So I already knew it wasn't going to be a good use of my time, an expensive waste of my time, for sure.
Well, but on that same thing, you just out of curiosity, you looked up a design job with one of the big manufacturers, right? And you were just absolutely not
qualified
at all.
Not even close.
Because you didn't have the piece of paper, right?
Right. I didn't go to school. I haven't worked a handful of years at any development level with any manufacturer. But because I absolutely didn't go to school and have a degree in any one of these few facets, that immediately disqualified me. Not that I was applying for this particular job, but I was curious what people that get placed with manufacturer jobs, what does it take to get those jobs? And I'm still sort of confused about what that threshold is. But yeah, the idea that I didn't qualify I thought was sort of silly.
Yeah, because you're probably better qualified than most.
It's hard to say. There's things that they teach you in school that I'm sure that I absolutely don't know about how those types of companies are structured and work. But I always look at things from the point of view of an outsider is almost best all the time. Somebody with a fresh perspective is going to have fresh eyes on a project. And if you quickly glazing over the idea of what automotive design looks like today, it's so fucking boring. It's so awful, with a few outliers. So why hire people consistently in this patterned way to arrive at these really gray, beige results? I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, I think, if we're going to go down that path here for a second, avant-garde designs, while not always pretty, they've got to be at least explored. Yeah. Otherwise, we make zero progress.
Yeah.
Tim mentioned something the other day about some vehicle that he thought was just absolutely nasty and garish and trying to look like it's classy and didn't even understand because classy looks like 1950s Cadillac. Well, yeah, that's what we're all taught is like that's what's ingrained in our culture. That's what classy looks like. If we're to live in Europe, then obviously a classy car would be a 50s Pininfarina build or something like that. But since we're in the U.S., a classy car is a Cadillac, where other countries are going to be different things because that's what we're there. So the only way that we can progress, whatever classy means, is to try avant-garde designs, and that means that we're going to have a whole bunch of really ugly stuff, and we're going to stumble across something that's really cool, and then everybody's going to start chasing that idea.
Yeah.
This batch of trucks that are going on right now is a really good example of. I'm not sure how far we can go down that path.
Yeah, hard to say.
Yeah, the Tesla truck is another good example of that.
It's an outlier, which is part of what makes it interesting. And not to get too wrapped up in this particular leg of the conversation, but yeah, obviously everything is intended to be some level of evolution, but it seems to me that the auto industry needs more outsiders that are qualified to come in and at least do some conceptual artwork. To just start spitballing some slightly different, out-of-the-box stuff. Everything just feels very safe.
Yeah. It always seems like whatever the next trend is usually driven by some new kid.
That's
some
true.
new person, somewhere along the line.
It's totally unpredictable.
Yeah.
It just happens all of a sudden, and it's really cool, and other manufacturers pick up on it and follow suit. But anything that's potentially going to be good is pretty much going to be disliked right off the bat.
Yeah. Yeah, because, was it Garth that said, "We fear change"?
That sounds right.
Yeah, it was just kind of a general human thing.
Yeah.
But, cycling back to the 10,000 hours, I think 10,000 hours being spent on a skill that you're just not good at is only going to make you mediocre after 10,000 hours. The chances of just blowing past that, like me doing abstract art, I would just learn... I would never be truly abstract. Yeah, I would just learn how to create this weird version of abstract that had a method to it.
Yeah.
That's not abstract. If you've got a system.
Right. You're, again, down to memorization. You're doing muscle memory versus creating from what's in your head.
Yeah. And then on that same thing, I look at artists like Crayola, who does really wild, mixed, just juxtaposition of all these weird elements, all in this absolutely elegantly beautiful, put together, semi-mix between cartoon and realism stuff. My brain can't possibly make that up. I can look at a lot of Crayola's work and then create something that's in the spirit of,
sure,
but I don't have my own idea. So I'm constantly looking around for different people's idea of abstract that I enjoy, and I'm leaning on that when I do my own personal art. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool.
Well, I think that's really true of anybody developing style, is you're always going to be influenced by the things that you enjoy anyways.
Of course.
And peck a little bit of this here and a little bit of that there to kind of arrive at your thing. So in some fairness, we're all garnishing a little bit on top of what we've seen and what we enjoyed. So...
yeah, I get that for sure, but I mean, for me, I think I would probably be just as successful if I had a couple of 12-sided die and each number was associated with a subject, and I tossed them down and went, well, today I'm painting a naked lady riding a turtle down Highway 74.
Wow.
That's what today is.
You've almost described conceptual art.
Yeah, but that's the only chance I have of coming up with truly abstract ideas.
Gotcha.
Would be to just it's just a stabbing at the dark.
Gotcha.
Where there's guys, again, Corolla or, my old tattoo artists, they could just come up with wild ideas just on a whim, just whip out just all kinds of weird shit, and it's just what it was. So I could spend 10,000 hours practicing abstract stuff, but it's never going to change.
I think the time is actually better spent, as silly as it'll sound, just being doing more soul searching and finding some comfort level with yourself. Because once you, at the same time that you're discovering the things that you're good at or that you want to be good at, hopefully you're also discovering what your weak points are.
Yeah.
And there's weak points that you're not going to learn your way out of. You just have to decide and be honest with yourself. I'm straight up not good at these aspects of things. I either need to relinquish those things to somebody else, or minimize my involvement with that thing that's going to get me in that realm. So... not necessarily avoiding things that are going to cause you pain, but if we're good at stuff, we're also bad at stuff. And in the realm of trying to learn how to do so many things, especially running a business on top of a creative side, There's a lot of people that aren't good at both, and that's fair. But we all have the tendency to want to be the superhero in our own story and be good at everything and amazing. And while we can all go through the motions and more or less accomplish an end result, that doesn't mean we did it well.
Yeah.
So, in the realm of business, somebody else might be better at doing paperwork. Somebody else might be a more diligent person to hire to do all the packing and shipping. Because it's not a good use of your time, or it's not worth your time, but it's an important business aspect. Like figuring out how to delegate a little bit, or, like I said, not putting yourself in the situation where you're having to do things that you're straight up not good at. Unless you enjoy the challenge of those things, but if you're a professional designer and door handles or something is a weak point for you, that's really sort of unusual. You have to figure out what the workaround is for not getting overly involved in stuff that's going to show that you're not good at something, one leg of your professional thing, because it will reflect on everything you do professionally. If you try to look like you're really good at everything, or in this one little aspect of what you do professionally, it won't paint you as very professional.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point when you say if you're good at one thing, then you're terrible at something else.
It's fair.
Every skill you are great at has its repercussions.
Makes sense.
Video games are a good example of that. If you pick the big axe-wielding dude that can swing an axe like crazy, he's not fast. Or you pick the female character that's super fast, super stealthy, and they can't swing a big giant axe, or whatever the things are. For me, I'm a good writer. I just naturally use punctuation and all that stuff. I'm great. But that means I suck at taking notes. I cannot do shorthand because my brain is obsessing on wanting to put in punctuation, properly spelled words. I can't. My rough drafts are way better than they should be. When you write, when you write, they teach you to just vomit a bunch of information onto your piece of paper, or just get it out. I can't. As I'm typing, I'm correcting, I'm editing. My first drafts are pretty ready to just have a few little button-up things and restructure the sentence stuff. They need restructuring. They don't need to be edited for punctuation and that sort of thing. It's an absolute disaster to try and do anything. So I accept that at this stage as my first draft is just going to be way more than it needs to be, even though I end up throwing away half of my first drafts because of sentence structuring and stuff like that. They just get all tossed out. And that's just something I've had to come to grips with. I can't throw out a bunch of ideas and then start to pull it apart. I don't work that way.
Yeah.
So that's the downside of being a good writer is I'm a terrible shorthand note taker.
Yeah.
Just can't do it.
Well, the best you can be is aware of it and obviously you found the way to use that to your advantage on the other side, which is good. This just goes to prove you just gotta be honest with yourself about those types of things and how you can use them towards what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I'm really, really cautious to not be down on myself about the things I'm just not capable of. It's a absolute waste of time.
That takes time and practice, though, too, to not be
but I think
hard on yourself.
Exactly, and I think my point is, getting back to John's thing of is there anything that you can help? Is there a blueprint that works on everything else? I think the blueprint would be find your strengths, know your weaknesses. Don't be mean to yourself about your weaknesses. If it's something you want to work on it. But don't be mean to yourself about it. It's not useful. Know that you want to do it. I wish I could be a better note taker. I try, but then it ends up being illegible to me.
Yeah.
And I just gave up. So it just is what it is. I take longer to take notes. That's it. I've got a whole folder full of notes, and they're crazy. way too edited for what should be shorthand notes. But I think if anything were to be a blueprint, it would be more of spend 1,000 hours of the 10,000 trying things to find out what you're good or bad at.
Yeah.
I think bodywork is probably one of the most distinct things that you can see production versus custom guys. Yeah. You might have a different opinion on that, but I think you got production guys that can blow through bodywork in a production shop and looks pretty damn good, and they can do it really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And then you get the guy who's more tedious like I am. I can't do anything quickly. I could get there fairly quickly, but it drives me bonkers. I need to dial it in. Oh, no, just a little more here, a little more here, a little more here.
Sure.
Otherwise, my brain drives me bonkers. So I end up having to take 4, 5, 10 times as much time to bodywork something than a production guy can. And it would just eat me up working in a production shop.
Yeah.
Versus I've had production guys do bodywork at the shop, and then I have to come behind them and dial everything in. So all they do is I like get it to the midway point, and then I've got to spend the rest of the time, another 3 or 4 times as much as they did, to go from there. It's not to say they did a bad job. It's just the level of work that I need for the shop ends up being this. But it is that separation. I couldn't work at a body shop because they would fire me for taking too long to do it.
Yeah.
And there are people that are great at doing this and compartmentalizing their skill in this way, and I'm great at compartmentalizing my skill in this way. So I think the 10,000 or the first 1,000 hours should be spent. What are you good at? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Try a bunch of things. Fail. You and I talk about how much you learn from failing.
Most everything.
Yeah, you learn a ton from failing. To me, it's equal. I learn just as much failing as I do from succeeding.
Nice.
Because I learn, that whole process was this, and I know that these were the screw-ups. If it goes perfectly, that's cool. Maybe I learned these things along the way, but they're almost identical.
Yeah.
So
it does become really important to take failure in stride. I would say that's the one thing that however many thousands of hours after this point, I've gotten really, really good at failing, if that's a thing that you can be good at. I don't want to fail, obviously, but I've learned to fail laughing, I guess is the best way to say it. Well, that just did not work. I'm glad I tried, but that's another memorization thing. Now I remember this process, and where I zigged, next time I'll zag. Yeah. I'm just going to try a different way next time. But getting comfortable with failure is incredibly important. And being able to laugh at the failure. Sometimes big failures can hurt a little bit, but then in the bigger picture, it's still important to not be down on yourself about everything. Because whether you're failing at something you're trying to do or otherwise, things are always up and down in life. Nothing's linear. Some days are better, some days are worse. Yeah. But you really don't need to add your own stress by doing that, especially in a creative industry. If you're a freelancer and you work for yourself, every bit of extra hard on yourself that you're doing to stress yourself out makes you a worse employee that day at the very same time. Yeah. How well can you concentrate when you're stressing yourself out about yesterday's work that didn't go well? Every day is a new day. Try again. Let's just not try to have the least amount of failures in a row, I guess. Yeah, of course. But I mean, as long as you're learning something every time, but then it kind of takes me to the threshold of when you think you can do something full time. If you're failing that consistently, you're not ready. As long as you're learning, you're moving in a direction, but you can't really rely on failing on somebody else's dollar. Yeah. That's not a wise way to start a business at all. So you need to leave yourself the comfortable room for failure without the stress of it being somebody else's money or project. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes people that you work with give you the space to make some mistakes, and that's nice because people believe in what you're doing or they want to challenge you, and so you do have to go outside your bubble a little bit more on something, and sometimes that takes a few different attempts. I have that with paintings and drawings quite a lot. Not everything happens on the first try. When I go from the first try straight into the second one, I don't even stop. I don't take a nap or anything. I've got the information from this failure. I'm diving straight into the next one. But I probably went an unusual route compared to most people because, as I'm saying, wait until you're done doing big failures because I just jumped straight in. But I also wasn't horrible when I started. Yeah. If I can be just kind to myself in this particular regard. I wasn't bad when I started. I did a lot of things business-wise badly. Yeah. But as an artist, I was very good. I think I was pretty good anyways. But everything else that I did in regards to business building, bigger part being like communication, for example, something we can all improve on. But I really needed to improve on that. So, and if you're not communicating with people and staying in touch with them about what you're doing, what they're spending money on, they're probably not going to keep working with you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess we probably both agree that at this stage, because John asked, what were your first 10,000 hours like compared to all of the hours since? And I think all the hours since is embracing failure. Yeah.
in stride a whole lot better.
Yeah, because the successes are still successes.
Yeah, they feel good no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to, they don't feel any bigger. I mean, even
That's true.
it's been a year since the book's been out, and okay.
There's a high when it's happening and
Yeah.
it's going well, but you know from experience that won't last forever.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really cool. It was
Yeah.
my biggest success, and looking forward to the next one. But still,
You just keep yourself grounded
Yeah.
so that you can move on.
exactly, got to keep going. But I think that that would be the single thing that I would say at this stage. I'm not afraid to fail. Period. A lot of people, when they message me and ask about going, starting their own business, or just in general, like, what does it take to do these sorts of things? They're just afraid of failure.
Yeah.
I don't know, at this point in my life, I don't know what there is to be afraid of a failure.
Right. What's the worst that can really happen compared to everything else you've gone through at this point?
Yeah, exactly. You just keep trying it. My dad said something to me the other day. He goes, "Man, I really got to admire your tenacity. I don't know how to not."
Right.
As much as, I mean, you know what my struggles have been over the last year and a half,
Sure.
2 years. It's never made me feel like shit, I need to throw the towel in.
Right.
But what are my options at this point? My options are work for someone else, or keep working through all of this
Right.
until...
Well, you'll never do.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
At this stage in my life, I could not imagine working for somebody else. I've even been offered jobs, and I turned them down because I can't. One, they're going to ask me to do the same thing over and over, which
Right.
we've already discussed is going to drive me bonkers.
Yeah.
And two, I'm not done trying.
Yeah.
I don't know when I'll be done trying.
Yeah.
That's what this after the 10,000 hours is over, this is where I'm at. Failure is not even a concern to me. It doesn't.
Yeah, I'm similar in a slightly different way, and it might be one of the things that I can be happy about myself, is I don't look far enough ahead to consider the possibility of failure. I just jump in, and the end result is a failure, then that's what's happening right in that moment. I don't consider the outcome of something. I assume it's going to work from the get-go, and I adapt on the fly. And if it doesn't, I don't get derailed.
Yeah.
I don't put so many chips in this is totally going to go right, and it's going to be perfect. I'm along for the ride. Most of the stuff that I do well starts from something that I just did casually.
Yeah.
A really quick sketch is going to turn into the coolest painting I ever did because I didn't pay attention or put too much effort into, is it going to be the best thing I ever did? It could go all wrong if I pick the wrong color. I don't think about stuff like that. It's not important.
Yeah.
That stuff will keep you from starting, and that's the problem. And I get that people are afraid of failure because we're all in different parts of our life where we have different levels of responsibility. So some failure would be good if, like, you had a family and everybody was relying on you. So that, again, it's just part of everybody's journey is a little bit different. So everybody's career is going to be shaped a little bit differently. So their risk assessment is going to be a little bit different. But again, I never thought that far ahead. I thought always I would rather fail at something I love doing and then hate doing something easy every day.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, okay. We've talked about that too. Like, what if we were to just find that thing that, like, well, this is making money. I just couldn't do it.
It might be all right for a very short time.
Yeah.
But I would certainly be bored very quick.
Yeah.
Variety is what I need. I can't do the same thing all the time.
Yeah, and for anybody who's kind of wondering, because I'm designing the kits now at this point, and going, well, yeah, but you're going to start building these kits over and over. No, I'm not. No, I'm designing the kit. I'm enjoying this stage. I'm going through the product development, what it takes to bring it to market, making sure everything is perfect. The guys in the shop are going to be one building the kits and shipping them out, and then I get to keep building new things.
Yeah.
I get to keep consulting. I get to keep talking
Yeah.
to everybody. I'm not out there reproducing the same thing over and over
It goes
again.
back to delegating the parts that you don't want to do.
Can't do it.
Relinquish some responsibility. Exactly. You can keep all the gears moving so long as you don't think that you have to be the person that does everything.
Yeah, I can't.
And the best you can be is just honest about it. Like,
Yeah.
this can work as long as I don't feel like I have to do every single step of it. And most industry jobs are like that. There are a few where you could sort of do everything, and I might be an outlier in that I'm doing a lot of stuff. What I do is really scaled down, so it's simple compared to what most people do. But it would sure be a lot easier with a team or something. There's so many responsibilities that would be great, because anytime that you're doing something not directly related to the thing that you specialize in, you're taking time away from the thing you're supposed to be specializing in.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, it's, you know, why I ended up having my mom take care of most of the administrative stuff for the book. I can't answer. It doesn't make any sense for me.
Yeah, not a good use of your time.
Oh yeah, answer. Can you check on my book order?
Yeah,
Sure.
It's important, but it's not a good use of
Yeah,
your time.
it's just as important as everything else I'm doing. But if I'm going to stop working on a suspension design, I'm one of the only people that can do that. To answer somebody's question of, hey, can you check on my tracking number on my book? That anybody can do.
Yeah.
That makes absolutely no sense for me to do that, so I delegated it to my mom. But so maybe that would be part 2 of what's it like after the original 10,000 hours. Is I air quote every single time I say that because I don't believe in the 10,000 hour thing. But after we've established that and become to our stage, would be just knowing better when to say like, no, I'm not made to do that.
Yeah.
Knowing at this point, I know if somebody were to come to me and go, I'd like to do this. Can we do this? I know, no. 1, it's not fun. 2, maybe it can't be done for the dollar figure.
True.
Maybe it's just we're going to get bored. Maybe we've done it before and we know that the outcome's no good. We've just have enough successes at this stage to, doesn't matter what the dollar figure is, we can just go, no, it's not going to work out for any number of reasons.
Right, just not a good fit for that job.
Yeah, whatever the thing might be. Yeah, it's not uncommon to... I think you've mentioned the same thing. Have somebody hit you up and go, "Hey, I'd love to do this." My art's a really good example of that. I get people to hit me up all the time and say, "Hey, will you do this? We paint my grandmother or my family or whatever it is," and I'll take them on now and then, and I go crazy after a short time.
Yeah.
Versus the last painting I just finished off took 28 days on one painting because I enjoyed the subject matter.
Yeah.
I can't enjoy someone's grandparent as a subject matter. I can't paint somebody's car as a subject matter. It's not fun for me.
Yeah.
And since I don't need to make money in my art,
you don't feel forced to have to do anything you don't want to do.
Yeah, and I know better. It's
Yeah.
not, I don't do art because it's fun. I do the art I do because it's fun.
Yeah.
Random art's not like that. And I always, of course, jokingly ask you if you're going to paint grandparents holding cats.
Right.
Because those are your favorite things, of
course
course.
they are.
But just simply knowing, no, that's not going to be fun.
That's, I think,
Or-
part of the experience that could be attributed to 10,000 hours. Learning to say no better. Because in the beginning, in the first 10,000 hours, maybe, you're going to want more opportunities and more reasons to do the thing to get paid.
Yeah.
To help you learn some of the lessons that you can't learn until you're physically doing everything all the time anyways. But eventually you get to a point where you can't do any more stuff. You genuinely need to do less. And it's what are we going to cut out? What do we not need to waste our time doing anymore? What do I actually really fucking hate doing?
Yeah.
That falls into this
Yeah.
category of what I do, and I get why people are asking me to do it, but no, I cannot do. And the best thing you can do is learn to say no, so that you're not, as we were talking about the other day, doing jobs resentfully.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you just have this built-up tension in the thing that you do, and it's hard to see past it once you're in it.
Yeah.
Man, why did I agree to do this? I already knew I didn't want to do this, but I think the mistake I personally have made plenty, and probably still do plenty, is you want to be nice to everybody, and you want to be fair, and you want to do as much as possible, and it's easy to get swept up in a conversation and accidentally agree to something and go, oh, man.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even unfold into a, why did I agree to that? To start on it and go, wow, I didn't think, why am I doing this? It's
Yeah.
a little bit silly.
I'd have to say, as I'm listening to you talk about that, I have to say that it is part of that 10,000 hour initial journey. Is having gone there and gotten to where we are as if you want to call it masters of our particular craft, is we know what our specialty is.
Yeah.
I know better than to take on some weird avant-garde build that would be, if somebody hit me up and say, hey, let's do the next Riddler car, of course I would love to build $1 million car. It would be a cool project. What is the style going to be? Because I know what my style is. So if somebody came to me and said, hey, I want to build something that looks like this, and it's not my style, I can't have fun doing that the whole time through. It doesn't matter what the dollar figure is. I know what my specialty is. My specialty is this style. Trying to force myself to not do that style, if somebody said, I want it to look like a roadster shop car, I can't. It's not what we do.
Right.
I don't have a problem with it. It's
Sure.
just not my style. And I think the only way that you can know that is to have gone through all of these things and struggle and go, man, why am I not enjoying this?
Right.
Well, the reason I'm not enjoying this, it's like me and Harleys. I'll never own a Harley motorcycle. they can't look the way that I want my motorcycles to look.
Yeah.
I'm not even nothing against Harleys in that sense. It's just there's nothing you can do to a Harley to make it look the way I would want it to look. Not without doing a gas cap rebuild where you just take the cap off and design everything underneath it around a Harley motor. And I guess we could call it a Harley just because it's got a Harley motor in it. But I know better than to say yes to particular types of builds because they're just not.
Yeah.
It's not what we do.
That's the only thing that seems like it comes better with experience. I think to that point, the creative side of these types of things naturally progress the way they're going to, almost irregardless of the hours. It's happening at the same rate that you're learning the business aspects of stuff. But the business aspects of stuff and the learning more about yourself as you go are almost happening on this separate journey, on a separate parallel road to as you're learning more about your creative thing.
Yeah.
You're going to get better at your creative thing if it's really your talent and passion, kind of separately on its own no matter what. You're almost safer keeping it as a hobby because it never gets diluted with this other road of people who can add a lot of speed bumps to that road and cause you to question a lot of things along the way. So the roads run parallel, but they're not the same speed. And I think you learning to do something on your own, that can happen very naturally on its own, kind of irregardless of the hours. But the things that make it work into a business, obviously that's where I'm pulling my most experience from, going, that was the hardest part of my journey, trying to figure out how to take the thing I already knew how to do well and make it usable, get it in front of people in a way where it made sense.
Yeah.
And then also to create value around it is a real challenge. And that also definitely falls into the 10,000 hours of the experience thing, trying to find where you fall in the value of what you do within the market of what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I can agree with that for sure. All of that, really, because I've done the same thing. I don't build custom motorcycles, regardless how many custom motorcycles I've done, because I kind of don't want to build them for anybody else.
Yeah.
They're mine. I do my thing. I do my tinkery thing.
And it's important for some legs of what you enjoy to stay a hobby.
Yeah.
And that's hard to know until you accidentally done it as a job, and you went, wow, I used to really like doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that you have to do it for somebody else, and someone's like, that's neat, can we change X, Y, and Z? And pretty soon you've built something that you don't even tell people I was involved in this.
Oh, yeah.
It's cool, I'm glad, I'm going to take this check to the bank. I never want to do this again.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely had those projects where I just, please don't, I don't want to be associated with this, at all. But one of the other questions, part of the thing that John had asked was, as you get better at things, do other things become easier? So what was it? Does mastering one craft make it easier to master others? Absolutely. I think, as long as they're associated with each other, if you learn how to be an amazing welder, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're going to become the greatest chef, because there's very little crossover there.
Yeah.
But I have talked about how me picking up, learning how to drink beer, or enjoy beers, all the craft beers, and the really intense flavors that come with so much of the craft beer stuff these days. For me being Mr. Turkey Sandwich and spaghetti with meatballs guy for most of my life, today those things are absolute dial tones. I want to try all the rare wild flavors because I learned how to enjoy IPAs to their fullest. I've learned how to enjoy stouts, which led into barley wines, which are incredibly intense flavors. That made getting into spirits, whiskey, tequila, all of that stuff really easy. Black coffee. I've hated coffee my entire life. Love the way it smells, can't stand the way it tastes.
Yeah.
It was too strong of a flavor. The flavor of vinegar, anything vinegary, blue cheese, anything that's mustard, anything on those pungent sides, made it, I didn't like any of those. But because I learned how to enjoy beers and other flavors, it made that directly translated into enjoying nice, fancy foods. So in that same context, let's say learning how to be really intricate and delicate with my hands while working the machines, because most of the work we do obviously is all manual, so learning how to be super intricate and delicate with my hands made it really fast to pick up other skills that were with my hands. The
Yeah.
last time I picked up a guitar, which I used to play in a band in high school, it was never great, but the last time I picked up a guitar, I picked things back up really quickly. And it wasn't like riding a bicycle. It was like this entire time I had been occasionally practicing, and I just picked it up super fast. The fastest, because I've been riding bicycles for most of my life, the fastest I've ever been was 5 years ago on a downhill bike. Just as I'm getting older, and it wasn't because I was practicing the whole time, it was just when I got back on a bike again and started riding, that all the other little skills all started to kind of like come together and made it all so fast to learn the new skills. So like painting is a good example. I don't know if I ever showed you the artwork that I progressed from day one, and 6 days later the difference of the two was insanely night and day. Like some other people's 2 or 3 years progress was made in 5 days for me, because I'm already predisposed from having gone through the 10,000 hours of learning how to use my hands in 10,000 hours, how to look at something and translate it, coming up with ideas and translating it into a physical thing. So yeah, if it's in the same family of things, absolutely, learning one skill can amplify the next skill more than you would ever expect.
Yeah.
I don't know what your experiences are.
Yeah, I would think so. I think that comes back a lot to problem solving, and then hopefully at the same time a little bit of wisdom as you're getting older anyways, because obviously 10,000 hours is, how many years is that?
Yeah.
So you're not getting younger at the same time.
Yeah.
So hopefully you're getting wiser and pulling experiences together, and being better at problem solving as time goes is really, really helpful in that. So, but yeah, I would say pretty much everything kind of helps do something else, especially if they're so closely related. Plenty of things that I've done, I thought the more that I bounced back and forth between things, the more they helped each other.
Yeah.
Strangely, driving a Volkswagen Bug fast has helped me learn to drive a Porsche, and driving a Porsche has helped me more efficiently drive the Bug.
Yeah.
And those things don't really cross over, but from my perspective, there's so many things about each of them that's helped me do the other.
I did the same thing between my KLX and my MV. Being able to go back and forth made learning each one exponentially quicker. Like they made bigger lurches.
And that's still considered a basic motor skill. So you can get better at those things. And the other part about that, I think, at getting older also, at least in my experience, has helped me become more open-minded about things.
Yeah.
So you're more, at least in my experience, more open to alternative ideas to solutions. I might be solution-oriented, but I am totally open to the answer being different than I'm used to, trying something different to see where a different outcome is. So sometimes that translates into other things, helping learn other things.
I think that kind of rolls back to not being afraid to fail.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of central theme where all these things kind of roll together pretty organically, as long as, and it seems like at the core, if you're not stressing yourself to death, failing 100 times all the time, then all these things will happen really, really organically, as long as you're listening to yourself throughout the entire process and going, this works, this doesn't work, this stresses me out, I'm not good at these things, I'm good at this other stuff. Kind of back towards what we were talking about a little bit earlier, in the journey of learning stuff, there was a huge lull where I didn't draw for a couple of years in between moving to California, and I did not get worse in that time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I picked it up and I was like, I mean, to some degrees it was like riding a bike, but I didn't get worse because I spent so much time doing it already. I had some basic motor skills memorized and maybe a slight predisposition to already knowing how I wanted to do it. I've since certainly got a whole lot better from that point, but I certainly didn't slide backwards either. So it wasn't like, some skills do seem like they disappear a little bit over time, but something that you're really good at, like to the core, those things don't leave you, I don't think. It's easy to feel that way, and sometimes I feel that way as I'm a little bit older and go, man, I gotta draw a little bit every day because I'm worried that if I don't, I'll forget how to draw or something.
Yeah.
I do feel like that, strangely, also knowing that I went so many years without drawing and very little change in that short amount of time. But from that point to now, there's a huge amount of trial and error and practice and messing things up. And, but kind of, again, back to the point of failing really comfortably, that leaves you open to end results. Anything can happen. So, does that help you learn anything? Yeah, if you're open to failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? Yeah, but I agree that learning to weld probably might not help you be a good cook. What I do artistically has not translated into anything engineering-wise is a great thing that I think about, because I used to think that I was going to end up doing something more automotive in the engineering world. I wanted to do something that was more mechanical design, not aesthetics. Aesthetics is always what drew me to a car, and just incidental that that's always what I drew. But I also did tons of engine cutaway drawings, transmission cutaway drawings, things that you wouldn't think somebody would want to just sit and draw. And that's more of the type of stuff I did when I was younger, because I was way more interested in mechanical workings of stuff. And I still am, but not in the same engineering way that you are. We obviously had a divergence in our journey where you went way more engineering and I went way more aesthetic. There's crossovers, and we both have an interest in the opposite direction, but our journey just took us in different directions. So, but it's easier to look back now and honestly go, well, the engineering level that I understand is based on my experience, say, from working in body shops and paint shops, and that helps me with my job a lot today. But even when we're going through the early stages of reading portions of the book and passages and chapters, there was so much that I thought that I knew that I absolutely did not know, which was that really harsh divide of, well, I do some level of automotive design for a living, but I don't necessarily know the inner workings of all these parts the way that I thought that I did.
Yeah.
Maybe on some general level, but maybe not even that much, apparently. And that's okay. Again, just kind of being comfortable with it. But, you know, for me to tell people I do car design on some level, yes, I design cars. Oh, how would you do X, Y, and Z? Oh, you're asking about an engineering thing.
Yeah.
That is not, yeah, I might want to ask an outside consultant about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people, not that we need to segue too far from this conversation, but it's odd that people don't, they'll ask a question not realizing you're asking a engineering or design question
right.
versus a design question. And then design, as we've talked about, can mean two different things: visual design and technical design.
Yeah.
Are the points in the right spot? Are the tires where they need to be? Track width, whatever. And then visual design. What does it look like outside of that? So a lot of people don't differentiate that, so they end up asking these questions that seem simple, but they don't have simple answers.
That's true. And in the same way, people ask the wrong question. Somebody asking, how does this look, like from the aesthetics of a truck that's laid out or something, that gives you some strange glimpse of how they have the rear set up. You go, wow, the wheel's centered, but your geometry's all wrong. But that's somebody's asking you the aesthetic question, but they should be asking you the design question.
Yeah, for sure. Again, not needing to go down that because that's a whole subject of its own. But back to the thing where you were talking about not painting for several years, or not doing any art for several years. I don't remember at what stage I realized that, but there was a couple points where I stopped doing a thing, and then when I picked it back up a year or two later, I was so much better at it. It felt like I was so much better at it than if I had just kept practicing.
Yeah, I feel that way sometimes.
So it's almost as if the subconscious is back there practicing, because they've done those studies.
Yeah.
The people who are absolutely at the top of their game, they thinking about doing the thing, their brain learns the repetitiveness. Obviously, you can't work out in your brain and get bigger. I mean, there's a tiny bit of science to that.
Of course.
But versus, let's say, driving Nürburgring in your head and trying to memorize all the corners and stuff like that, your brain absolutely processes all of that. So if you could do that in your head and you've got it memorized, and then you get out on the track, you're going to be better at it because your brain now is processing everything so much quicker because it's doing it from muscle memory or brain memory versus that. So I have to wonder if, during those times when I'm not painting, because obviously my last painting is probably the most technically fantastic I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I really hadn't painted for a year and a half or so, the last real painting I did. And if you looked at the difference between the two, it's night and day. It's like I'd been painting that entire time and finally got here and got to this stage. Meanwhile, there was no step. It was just that painting, then to this painting a year and a half later. I wish I knew a little bit more about brains and it could explain.
Right. Somebody would have a much more in-depth explanation about this for sure.
Yeah,
But it does make me think also at the same time there's a lot to be said about fresh perspective.
Yeah.
If we just take ourselves out of the situation, it's so hard when we're involved in something, especially when we're failing at it. The thing we want to naturally do the most is do it more until we get it right. And sometimes stepping back, especially for long periods of time, you've had enough time for your brain to reset, and you've come back to something with much fresher perspective than you possibly could. It's almost better within a much longer span of time because you have very little recollection of how the last one went.
Mm-hmm.
So all you can pick up with is the pieces and parts that you remember, but none of necessarily the stress of the one that I did yesterday didn't go well or whatever. So fresh perspective is nice, and that's something that's hard to remember to keep in practice because we want to continue to improve, and we know that we have to keep in motion to improve. So stopping doing stuff in order to improve seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, it does. But they've done studies on that as well.
Yeah.
It's important, especially if you've done an intense job. Like the idea of me, let's say the book, for example, diving straight into the next book. Hell no. There is nothing about that made any sense to me. I fried my brain. I had to take months off of that idea of writing, sitting in front of it, doing all the editing and stuff. If I had another job to do for somebody that was an editing job, I'd have just been fried. That's just all there is to it. So there's studies done that you need to give your brain a break from the thing. And artistic stuff, I think, is pretty important because it is such a...
It's pretty demanding.
It is really demanding, yeah. I mean, let's be realistic. Your brain is the most energy-intensive using thing in your body.
Yeah.
You can go on a 10-mile run, or you could think about something intensely for an hour.
Thinking burns a lot of calories.
Yeah, and it will just wipe you out. So going hard in the brain, just mentally on something, will just trash you. It'll wipe you out way more than you realize. So taking a break, getting a fresh perspective, just simply telling your brain it's all right, don't worry about it for a little bit. We'll go invent fruit-flavored fish sticks.
Of course. Yes.
Or whatever it is that we need to do to tell our brain that it's all right. Just go away and think about something else. For me, it's critical. I can't. I have to give it those things, the moment to just relax.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where it comes from, because me, I start getting deep into my art. I'm trying to figure out how to do this one thing, and then I start to fry my brain, and I can step away. Maybe that's what's causing it. I don't know, but whatever it is, I think it's worth saying that just letting your brain rest is critical.
Incredibly important. As you're saying that, and as you're saying that, I'm saying, I'm thinking, it's also really hard to know when to do that, or if you have the space. If what you do is incredibly commission-based, because then you really don't have much space. Everything that you're working on, your income is contingent on. So you don't really have the space to stop doing things because you need to continually produce. So that can be a little bit more challenging to know when it's okay to take a break is already really, really hard because it's not encouraged really in society to take breaks and vacations and whatnot. But
especially if you work for someone
else. Yeah, very, very good point.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between creating stuff on your own and putting that out in the world and you providing a service for people.
Mm-hmm.
That how to take a break between those two things is different. Yeah.
For sure. Well, it's definitely something I push in the shop.
Yeah.
If I go out there and the guys, I can tell they're struggling, like, walk away, work on something else.
Yeah.
What do you want to work on right now?
It's really hard to convince yourself to step away. It's almost easier if someone says you should just step away.
Yeah, because you're not useful if all you're doing is just staring at something blankly for 5 hours because you're trying to be inspired or figure something out.
Again, all that stuff comes down to just experience and knowing yourself well enough to go, if I'm this tired or if I'm in this mood, what I'm going to produce, I'm going to redo tomorrow. I might as well not bother. I might as well take that same amount of time to kick back, read a book, play video games. It might feel like a waste of time. But if I'm recharged and ready tomorrow, then I've made my time. I've made it work.
Yeah.
So just take better breaks.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's something I tell a lot of people when they say, "Oh, I'm going to take today off," and I'm just super stressed because I got a lot of stuff to do. If you don't take that day off on purpose and ignore the stress, it's a waste of a day off.
Right, and it's a matter of time before it catches you, anyways.
Yeah. So I guess that would be another really good thing to say about the since the 10,000 hours. I've certainly learned how to let my brain have a moment. And I remember it was years ago. I was fried. I was just done. I think it was around when we did the Merc for SEMA, and just going hard for 3 or 4 months straight trying to get it to SEMA, and then got back and just crashed. I think I slept for a month and a half straight. I didn't sleep for a month and a half straight, but I didn't do anything for a month and a half. I took a month and a half off, just hung out at the house, and it took every bit of that just to feel somewhat normal again.
Yeah.
Because to go that hard for 3.5 months straight, and then go to SEMA and have to be on the clock in a way I've never had to be before because it was a booth car.
Yeah.
And, everything that was associated with that, and then I remember the drive home on Saturday. Brian Good, I was staying in his room, and he woke me up. He's like, "Hey, we gotta go. We gotta get ready." I could not stay awake. I was absolutely like when you see toddlers that are like got ice cream in their hands and they're just like kept falling asleep.
Yeah.
I was absolutely.
Your brain had let go.
No, yeah, it was it. My brain said we did what we needed to.
Right.
Now you crash.
Right. I got you through this now. Yeah. I refer. That's more. That seems a little bit more forced, like your body just puts you in that. But after I've completed really, really big involved jobs, I refer to that time as recovery time.
Yeah.
Just allow myself a few days space to just kind of mellow out so that I can come back fresh. So I do want to get right back to work after pretty much every job that I do, but I don't ever want my quality to diminish or my ideas to seem wash, rinse, repeat. So the best thing I can do is allow myself some recovery space. I work freelance, so that's really easy for me to create that space. But thankfully I also work quickly, so by the time I get back into the headspace where I'm like, yes, I'm going to work, it all comes together very quickly. But it has taken years to figure out how to take good breaks. Thankfully I live by the beach, so I can take some really cool breaks now.
Yeah.
But I think it's also the curse of coming from the paint and body part of the industry is resting is not encouraged. You're not a team player if you're not at the shop 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's demonized, if anything. There's some outliers, some people that I've worked with or for that were much more accommodating than others, but I've never heard of a paid vacation or sick leave in the 8 or so years that I worked in paint shops. Like, I didn't even really have weekends, honestly. Most jobs are 6 days a week, 5.5 at least expected. So taking a break, weekends didn't even exist until I started working freelance again. And even now, I still find myself working every single day out of habit, but I have a much easier job.
Yeah.
It's something I like doing. It's very easy to do naturally every day. I just try to take my days, quote unquote, off. I might still be drawing or doing paintings, but they're more what I want to do that day. They're not like commissions or working for a shop. I'm still doing what I like to do because it's what I like to do as part of my break, which seems unusual. When people ask me what I do on my day off, I still do exactly what I do. I'm just not doing it for anyone else.
Yeah.
So I have a pick of what I'm going to work on that day.
Yeah, certainly makes sense.
Yeah.
If that's the break you need.
Yeah.
It's kind of the hard part when your hobby is your job.
Yeah.
Then you got to figure that out. I mean, I haven't had a custom vehicle for a little while for a reason because I don't have the headspace to put the energy out on a Saturday. Trying to keep my motorcycles maintained enough to be able to go out is hard. I just don't want to work on them. I don't want to do anything mechanical right now.
Yeah.
I just want to get on the motorcycle and go ride. I just want to get in my car and go drive. I just want to go somewhere where it's not at the shop. But to even just do the basic maintenance on them is, I got that one bike that's one of my favorite bikes I've ever owned, and it's just sitting there because, what has it been, a year and a half, 2 years?
Oh, wow.
Because I don't have the energy to. It wouldn't cost that much to fix.
Yeah.
I just don't want to.
Yeah. And, people's ideas of what they enjoy also changes over time. So it's not like who you are today is exactly who you're going to be 10 years from now.
No.
Nothing like that is set in stone. There's plenty of things that I used to enjoy that I don't do anymore, whether it's out of self-preservation or or just I don't enjoy that the way that I used to. I certainly don't like working on my own cars anymore. I prefer not to.
Yeah.
At this point, I just need to get there, and I don't want there to be any question mark about am I going to get there in the car that I drove today.
Yeah.
So, I work that into my life. No longer worried about if I'm going to get there or not.
Yeah.
I don't have the time to work on my own car, so I have somebody else work on it for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The guys do a really good job of picking up the pieces for me, but I don't have anything very intensely custom because I just don't have the energy to do that.
Yeah.
But we'll see. But anyways, I think we covered almost everything here. Let's see before we sign off. Some sort of we nailed it pretty good on that one. Great question, John. Thank you. If you guys want to check out, John just went on his own, started his own, got his own studio doing photography and stuff. He is OC Product Photos. I just saw his shop about 2 weeks ago. I went down there. Beautiful place. I'm super stoked for him. Wonderful facility he's got down there. So if you guys want to follow him on Facebook or Instagram, OC Product Photos, John O'Neill, damn talented photographer for sure. We'll definitely have to have a conversation with John one of these days as well about something, anything. We'll figure it out. But anyways, thanks for listening, you guys, and if you enjoy this, we'll keep doing them. Anyways, you guys have a wonderful day.
Goodbye forever.
This is forever.